Right. Football clubs are preparing for the new season, and of course with that comes tours to different parts of the world for some teams. A new report has found that there is good reason why half of the Premier League sides are heading to America for their pre-season preparations. Well, Neil Joyce's company created the report, joins me in the studio now. Neil, really good to speak to you about this. I find this absolutely fascinating. First of all, just tell us the figures the report has found when it comes to the popularity of football or soccer, I guess, in the US.
Yeah, great question to start off with, and thanks for having me on board today. So some of you viewers at home might be surprised to know that there's 83 million fans of Premier League soccer in the US already. So compare that to the UK population, it's bigger than that alone. It's the third most popular sport in the US behind the NFL and the NBA. And of that 83 million, 42% of them haven't decided what football team they want to support. So there's 36 million people in the US who love football that haven't picked a team that they like yet.
And given those figures, I mean, how lucrative could it be for Premier League clubs getting these people on board?
Yeah, it could be transformative. I think there's been lots of documentation around financial regulation, some of the pressures that Premier League clubs are under from a revenue to cost standpoint as well. The US market could be huge for them. We've calculated that by the 2026 World Cup in the US, there's $1.1 billion of revenue available for the largest European clubs. So it's an average of about $321 million per year. So that revenue looks like 40 to 50 million for some of the larger Premier League clubs per year. That's the equivalent to some of their front of shirt sponsorship deals that they get. Not only is it lucrative from that direct revenue opportunity, but they've also got the opportunity to create more value for their global sponsors. Global sponsors always traditionally want the eyeballs that go with the Premier League games or the association with that brand. But if they grow the size of their fan bases in the US, which is what is required to hit those revenue numbers, they can provide more insight and value back to their sponsors who want more than just eyeballs. They want to know, I'm getting in front of the people that want to buy my product, not just I want to create awareness of my products as well.
So which English club currently is making the most of the US market?
Yeah, there's interesting ways to look at this, and we've had loads of debate, one within the football world as well, internally with my super smart analysts in the business. From a revenue standpoint, Man United has got the largest opportunity, swiftly followed by Liverpool. United is around 40 million US dollars per year that they could capture. They've established a really big fan base over many, many years, right? Their brand has got the highest level of awareness in that market. And so from a traditional standpoint, United are ahead of the other clubs right now. What is really fascinating to look at, though, is the growth of some of the maybe less fashionable clubs. Like we've looked at Wrexham's success, and I'm sure we'll have more discussion around that later on. But also Tottenham have been really successful. They've grown their fan base in the US 15% year on year. A lot of that is down to the fact they qualified to the Champions League in 2017. And they also then went on tour straight afterwards into that market. So you've got revenue and who's doing it well. You've then got who's growing their fan base and following, and Tottenham have done a really good job of it. But you've also got Arsenal, Manchester City, Chelsea, United and Liverpool. They're still growing at a rate of around 5% year on year. They're starting from a much stronger base. So there's really good signs of growth in that market.
Let's pick up on what you said about Wrexham there, because we all know about Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney taking over at Wrexham. How much do you think that has played into the popularity of the sport stateside? I was on a train recently, and there was two Americans sitting opposite me, and they were following the Wrexham match on their phone when there was loads of other Premier League matches going on. I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I don't think you could underplay the impact that Ryan Reynolds has had on that. You can just look at some data points alone, right? Wrexham's followers grew from under 100,000 on social media to 1 million pretty much overnight through association with Ryan Reynolds. You've also got the content approach. So just like we've seen in Formula One with Drive to Survive, you have Welcome to Wrexham. It's opening up new exposure and new awareness and storytelling to a US market that is craving new stories. And it's a romantic story, realistically. The underdog, through being repaired, through the grounds, the investment that's coming, the association with Ryan Reynolds, all of his brands that are associated with it as well. One of my colleagues the other week was on a flight back from London to the US. They sat down and there's a Wrexham pack in red with United, because United Airlines now sponsor them. Like, who would have imagined that 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it is fascinating. And there are plenty of other American owners now in the English game. Why do you think that is? I
mean, if you look at the backgrounds of many of them, they're private equity or venture capitalists in terms of what they're doing, and they're not going to invest in these sports franchises without a really good reason, right? You've seen really strong success on valuations of sports franchises in the US. You look at the brand values associated with a lot of these big European clubs now. they must understand that there's a huge ROI to be given by investing into these clubs. And it's not just on the revenue model today. And this is where this is really fascinating and exciting for us when we tap back into that 36 million undecided US audience alone. Imagine if a Premier League club could get 1 million of them and they spend $1 a month each. Those revenues suddenly become really interesting in terms of the overall valuation of what those clubs stand to make in the longer term.
And in terms of what they spend their money on, because obviously people automatically think about shirt sales, how are you seeing clubs kind of creatively generate income?
Yeah, there's some creative collaborations, and I'll talk about them in a few seconds. But first and foremost, the clubs have traditionally been focused on selling tickets to tour games and more kits as they come out. That's really about optimising the fans that you already know. The real upside in this opportunity is unlocking those fan connections that they currently can't get towards. And this is where the data that we've got's empowering them to do all of those things. So some of the creative collaborations, we've seen an announcement, Manchester City with WWE. WWE is bringing their fandom and Manchester City are associating with it. So they recognise that WWE is an opportunity to bring in new fans through those creative propositions. We look at Manchester United's recent home kit launch, where they did something really creatively with Roblox and also with Adidas as well. So they're understanding that there's new techniques to collaborate on to open up new audiences.
Do you think it's a matter of time before a Premier League match is played in America? Because we see the pre-season tours, and obviously we see what the NFL has done by coming over here. Do you see that happening?
I'm going to be really unpopular for everybody probably at home right now. I think it is a matter of time, with some caveats on it. Right? I think it has to be very clearly planned out. It's not an overnight thing. I think it has to be also clearly communicated the benefits to the fans that go to the Etihad, Emirates or Old Trafford every week around what the value is that's being created, that they may have to give up one game a season. So if it was positioned to them that they may have discounts on their season tickets, or there's reinvestment into the next star signing, because those revenues would allow that to happen, or it could be making the fan experience around those games better as well. So it's a fine balance between commercial gain and growing, because football is business, but also making sure you're sensitive to the existing fans' needs and wants.
And finally, just overall, what do you see as the future of football in America? It's clearly growing. I mean, how much more is that going to grow in popularity?
Yeah, it's all coming together with the head of the 2026 World Cup. We've seen the impact that Messi's had on Inter Miami. So they've gone from being sub 100 million revenue to 200 million in revenue since he's gone there. So they're the largest MLS franchise. Popularity, as we said before, you're 83 million US population of fans of football right now. I think it's about starting now, putting a strategy in place around that US market and understanding that there isn't a silver bullet to it. You've got to invest in cultivating those relationships. No different to you would if you were a direct-to-consumer business. And anyone familiar with life cycle marketing will know, starting off with investing in awareness-based activations, creative investments as well, but also investments in those local communities there.
Neil, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Cheers.